Why'd you choose ambergris? It's given that it comes out of whales' heads and was used to make cologne.
Well, there you go. Exactly.
You're answering your own question.
Yeah.
Okay, I suppose.
Well, in my case, I liked the alternate spelling, pronunciation of ambergris. So you get that kind of gristle feel to it because the city is relatively gritty. But I like the idea of this thing that was kind of disgusting, but also beautiful at the same time. There was something valuable, but if you found it on the beach, you'd pretty much think it was worthless because sometimes that stuff washes up. And so it also was just kind of there. Like I wrote the first few pages of the first story set in ambergris, and it was in my head. So then I kind of rationalized later why I had chosen it. So.
I mean, in this case, it is the name of a ship, a rather large ship involved in trade and lots of value. I don't know, something like that.
Okay.
I recall there were times when I was naming other ships, actually, because there's a lot of ships every now and then in the book, and I would keep going to Wikipedia and cross-referencing different fish and trying to find names that sounded good. And this one worked for me. I know it's not exactly a fish either, but it's a nautical.
It floats.
Yeah, it does float. Yeah. I think you raised your hand by a millisecond.
Okay, take it away.
My question is also for Jeff and David and concerns fictional geography. Obviously, in the case of ambergris, there is no published map of ambergris, nor should there be. But it's still very much a place that you have a sense of, even though there are only so many geographical details ever really mentioned. And I just sort of wondered how the process of whether you did just stumble into it in writing it, or whether there was sort of a construction of the way the city looked and the way the city was laid out that happened as you were writing.
I actually have pretty extensive back maps. I just don't like to publish them because the thing is that the back maps change. I mean, I'm talking about back maps like backstory. Because not every point in the map is mentioned in the story, so it's useful for me not to have the maps published because I may change some of those details. And if they're not central to the story, it doesn't really matter if I change them on my own. So the city is constantly changing in my head, but it's relatively consistent from story to story. I mean, if someone were to go through all the different points in there and the different areas that places are in, there might be a mistake or two I might have made, but in general, you would actually be able to map out the city. And one of the great challenges of Finch was it's set 100 years later with half the city flooded. So it was like, well, I did have to have maps then to kind of figure out exactly what remained, what was new, what was built over old stuff, and things like that. So, and you've got this beautiful map.
But then the question becomes, where does that come from? Is that, I mean, it looks like peninsulas in the real world. Is that?
Well, kind of. I drew it, and then someone else made it better.
So you did that. Cool.
The original. I can see my lines, in this professional. Yeah, what can I say? It's in so many ways. This imagined world, my imagined world, is meant to represent our world in lots of different ways, in ethnic diversity, and lots of the kind of history and political tensions are things that strike me as being true to this world as well, and true to our human history. So the landscape and the geography reflects that too. For me, it is pretty important to get the places kind of nailed down, because there's so many players in such diverse parts of this globe that, I need to know what's possible and what's not. And I'm really annoyed at how detailed this map is up there, because the next book, it's like I'm looking at that going, oh man, but they're supposed to get... So it's affecting, actually, the writing of the third book. My equivalent to having some flexibility, though, is in the first book, it was focused, this wasn't even here at all, and it was focused on this empire and a little bit more over here. In this case, because the other lands comes into it, it's sort of like the lens rolls over a little bit. And I love the notion that, there's stuff over here too, and I don't know what it is, but there's lots of potential to go there. So I like that too.
I just jump in really quickly.
Yeah,
I don't have a map, but in the follow-up to
this book, I drew an amazingly, if I do say so myself, detailed picture of Mark Genovich.
It's kind of a map of.
I can't draw a lick, so I was actually very proud. I drew that automatic. I was like thinking of something else. I drew it. I was like, whoa! I could not recreate it, so I had to fit that to the book.
I think you need to get a hat. You're seeing a resemblance.
Yeah.
And there was a
A question I like to ask writers when I come across them is
in their natural state.
well, relatively people. No,
Yeah.
what's come out in the last couple of years that we should be reading that we're probably not?
Gosh, I don't
Pretty
know.
good with that one.
Like Finch.
Well, I mean, I think, and I put this on my Amazon top 10 list for SF and fantasy this year, and actually David's on it. But the number 3, yeah.
Oh, you did that.
Yeah, oh, you have a lot to answer for, apparently. Was actually Eclipse 3 by Jonathan Strand. It's an amazing anthology and hasn't gotten any press at all. It's very strange. Another one is Bolano's, I think that's how you pronounce it, 2666. And then, I mean, I read a lot of non-fantasy because I'm surrounded by fantasy all the time. Pretty much anything that Picador does through their Europa imprint. I don't know what it is those editors are on, but they completely, almost every book they publish, I love. And they did the Hedgehog book by that French writer. It's called The Something of the Hedgehog. It's a really amazing book. And they did Steve Erickson's Zeroville, which is wonderful because it's one of the first books where his sense of humor kind of comes to the fore. And it's really amazing. I don't know. It's tough to pin down on that. But,
I have one book in mind just that came out this year, but if I may briefly plug a group that I helped sort of put together along with Joanne Cox. We help run what's called the Shirley Jackson Awards. It's been going for a couple of years, and I think part of our charge is to help notice works that might get overlooked. So if you go to shirleyjacksonawards.org, we've had a couple of final ballots. I think there's a lot of really great stuff on there that qualifies as dark fiction, horrific, but literate as well. For a fantasy book that I think, I don't know if it's overlooked, but that's not published by a fantasy publisher, I guess. The Convalescent by Jessica Anthony was published by McSweeney's. And it's a great book. It's a lot of fun. It's it ends in a very dark place, but it's about this Hungarian man who's very short, and it has this whole Hungarian back history that's very strange.
I'm sold. No, go ahead. Sorry.
But it mixes. He sells in the present day. This guy sells meat in a bus in the middle of the woods in Virginia.
Okay, now I'm sold.
Now you're sold. It has this whole almost like folklore built into it, and it's very clever, and it's a very Kafka ending. It's very much a fantasy end to it, and I don't know it very much parallels sort of the horribleness of the Iraq War. There's just a lot of stuff going on in this book. I very much highly recommend it.
Okay. Well, I'm not. I don't think I have much in the way to offer in the way of books that you haven't heard of. So I guess a lot of the stuff I'm reading are fairly prominent authors. So no great small discoveries. What comes to mind though, I don't know how much Octavia Butler you've read. I mean, she's passed away now and certainly very well known, but she's one that stands out so much to me. I keep reading novels of hers, kind of spaced out. I come to them every now and then, and I'm always amazed at the wisdom in them and her empathy and seeming ability to understand the best and worst of human nature. And it's deceptively simply written as well. But that's one that comes to mind. If you haven't read Octavia Butler, please do.
A couple more questions. Aaron?
What future projects are you guys working on that you're really looking forward to kind of getting into? But David, you can't say book number 3.
Book number 4. You can say whatever you want, actually.
Don't make it a 10-novel series either.
It would be true if I said book number 3.
True.
But that's not.
Make something
Maybe so.